I deathster Simon Cowell. Simon Cowell, for God's sake. I asked him, did you see me when I did that?
But then a minute later, he changed your life.
I knew as soon as I started singing that there was something off. I remember finishing and I looked to Simon and he was the only judge not stood up. And then Simon was like, wow. Rumour has it there was a contract on the table waiting for me that got ripped up. I was broken.
How do you then go from the lowest point in your career to then a record deal?
And I'd started to get real traction. I was putting ink to paper in Capitol Records in LA, the video going online and it becoming a viral thing. I was being flown all over the world. It was amazing.
But you felt different.
Growing up, sort of was abandoned by my friends when I came out as being gay. I would be stood in the mirror going, you ugly, disgusting, nobody loves you. Probably one of the lowest times in my life. And there was one time that I had found myself on a bridge. It's like my 2-year-old self gave me a bit of a hug. That's probably one of the most liberating feelings to date that I've ever had. It's just knowing that I am enough.
Here we go. You ready for this?
You really have done your research, Paul.
We just hit 100,000 subscribers. So if you are subscribed, thank you so much. If you're not yet, please consider hitting subscribe. It's quick, it's easy, and it helps us grow our community. Can we talk about Yorkshire?
Yes.
It's my favorite tea, by the way.
Yorkshire Tea is just the pinnacle.
So why is it the pinnacle for you?
I think just so many memories. It's home for me. That's what it represents. You know, even on the packaging, like the rolling fields and the little brick walls and the little fence and stuff like. And then it's just a good brew. Oh,
Phenomenal.
delicious.
I did a blind tasting.
Oh, really?
6, 7 different brands of tea.
Okay.
And I didn't rank Yorkshire as the top. Oh, I know. No, hold on.
Right, end the podcast. Let's.
Let me tell you why. Don't leave. I didn't have my tea chops yet.
Right, okay.
I was an amateur.
Right.
It was like too bold and strong and like, I didn't get it. But then I did it another month. By the time I got to like the third or fourth month, everything else is like water.
You just converted.
It was like, that's the only tea I can drink.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. Thank God. I mean, if you'd have told me like, you know, Tetley's is up there, I'd have bent the set, Paul. I'd have bent it all. But we're on the right foot. I mean, we both love Yorkshire Tea, so like this conversation is going to go swimmingly.
It's going to be good. This is good. All right, so Hull is where you're from. How would you characterize Hull? How would you describe it?
It's a little bit of a end of the road kind of a city. It used to be like a thriving sort of fishing city. And then when that kind of died off, it's not a through city. You're not going to have people coming through. Like Manchester is an amazing hub of people coming through or people staying there. Hull's not got that geographically. You know, it's end of the line, on the coast. I've always thought that Hull's a bit of a diamond in the rough. I mean, we won the City of Culture Award in like 2017, I think it was.
Yes.
When I was still in my day job there, I think. And it was amazing for the city and it transformed it. And we had, you know, a lot of money pumped in and we had people coming up and visiting us. And it finally put it on the map a little bit. And you can tell because when they do the national weather, Hull's one of the people up there. So I'm just like, yes, we made it.
Yes, we made it. So Hull is north.
Yeah.
And now that I've been here in the glorious UK for many years, there's stereotypes that come with those who reside in the north or are from the north.
Yeah.
So what do you believe are some of the northern stereotypes that are true?
I think, like I said, because of lack of opportunity and, you know, all that sort of stuff, we're a little bit more hard-faced, I think.
Okay.
You know, so it's like, you know, pick yourself up and get on with it kind of a vibe. You know, probably a little bit hard on ourselves, if I'm honest. One thing I will say about the North is the ability to be able to make light of a situation.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I found many of my friends from the North, right, are self-deprecating.
100%. It's one of my best qualities. What my grandma used to say, like, if you paint a tag on your own back, nobody will paint it for you. If you can sort of self-deprecate and you can use that quality it's almost like you take the power away from anybody else being able to do that.
Yes.
Like I said when I walked in and I'm talking about what I'm wearing, like if I went up north in this, they'd be like, what the hell is that? But I kind of like
Whereas in London, people were like, that's fly.
they're like,
I love that.
"Whoa,
That's
fashion."
hot. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I go to Weatherspoons up north and they're like, take that off. But I do love that. I do love that like humor, because it's like, I guess for up there in a working class, very much a working class city, you know, it's nice to be able to take the weight of the world off your shoulders by having a laugh. So,
Can we talk about being a normal guy,
yes.
right? Because, you know, when I think about your beginnings, right? Humble beginnings.
Yeah, very humble.
So how would you describe, as a little boy, how would you describe what home felt like?
I have really fond memories of home, and home is, you know, something I value a lot. You know, when I was growing up, my dad left when I was 2. So, you know, when my mum met my sister's dad, we were a bit more of a family unit then, and was for a long time.
And how old were you when your mom?
I was about 3, I think, when my mum met Graham, my sister's dad.
Okay.
And then, yeah, my sister was born a year after that. So there's 4 years between me and her.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you could recall that being 4.
I think so, like vaguely. I mean, I definitely felt as a very young boy that there was a little bit of a shift when my sister arrived on the scene.
Interesting.
I think Graham, you know, he was a dad to me and saw me as a son. And then when he had his daughter, then I very much felt like a stepson at that point, which was really sad.
How does this stepson feel?
I guess just a little less important. That was my experience of that. But to go back to what you were saying, like home for me is I have very fond memories, regardless of that kind of absence. My mum is you'd love her. She's an absolute diamond. She's my angel. She's everything to me. She's like a best friend. I tell her everything, sometimes in horrific detail. I think that is, when I think of home, that's probably the fondest memories. Being around my grandparents, my mum, my sister, you know.
I love that description.
Yeah.
There's close-knit.
Safety.
Safety.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, which is probably the most important word.
Yeah.
Is you felt safe in that environment.
Yeah.
Because that's what love is. Love
100%.
is where you can be safe.
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about that, the childhood, were there any points where you were able to interact with your father, or did he just move out? Because I think he was at Canada.
He moved to Canada when I was young. He wanted to move to Canada with us, and my mum told me that we went when I was maybe 1, and she loved it and she loved Canada, but she said, you know, she wanted to be near her parents. And so I think my dad at that point must have just made his mind up that he did. And he pen palled me and, you know, sent me birthday cards and stuff like that. But it was very much that. He didn't come back and see me. So we never, you know, I never had like birthdays with him in the picture or Christmases or whatever else. He would call every now and again, and I guess I would take the call out of an obligation. You know, my mum kind of encouraged me to have a relationship with my dad as much as I could. And then when I was 12, he brought me out there, and so I had a couple of visits when I was growing up, but you know, it wasn't that kind of relationship that I wanted.
That you wanted.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I was going to ask,
Yeah.
is that, were you loved in the way that you wanted to be loved?
No. By my mum, by my grandparents, by my family, yes. But it was difficult with the father figure, and I think that was something that I wasn't really going to truly understand until probably this age.
Interesting.
You know, just recently I organised for us to do family counselling, and it just, you know, it didn't. I wanted it to work, but my dad is very narcissistic, and so unfortunately, he just can't see past himself. You know, and I think I've always wanted to prove to my dad that I deserve to be loved. And I've tried to prove it to myself, I think. But I think, you know, when we was having those conversations in therapy, I don't think my dad really understands the impact he had on me when he left. And I think because Graham sort of was there and provided, but wasn't that father figure. I don't think my dad truly understands what I've missed. And I think it's a lot.
Isn't it something how even as an adult, we still seek the validation from our parents?
100%.
In Hull,
Yeah.
right, you enter HR.
Yes, sir.
The reason why I laugh, so my wife was in HR
Right.
for quite some time. And when I was doing the research, I was like, Calum Scott was in HR. Like,
Honestly.
what was he doing in human resources?
I know.
So let me ask you, what were you doing in human resources?
What the hell were you doing with your life, Callum? I think, again, it's the whole thing of, or the northern thing of like, make sure you get yourself a real job.
Okay.
And I guess the amount of people that have come from Hull that have gone on to have big music careers is few. I think only a couple of artists. I think the House Martins, I don't even think they were born and raised in Hull. I think they went to school and university in Hull. David Bowie's touring band, I think.
Oh, well.
From Hull.
Okay.
But I think that's it. I could be mistaken. And I hadn't discovered my voice by then. So when I'd seen my friends that were leaving college and leaving sixth form to get jobs, and I saw my best friend at the time who'd bought his first car and was able to save money to go on a holiday and stuff, I was like, that's cool.
That's cool. Yeah. I need a career.
Yeah, I want
to pays me.
Yeah.
And music is not going to do it.
Right.
So you're in your early 20s.
Yeah.
At what point do you discover your voice?
I would say a couple of years into that job, because my sister had always been the performer in the family. So she went to dance school when she was younger. She did tap, ballet, contemporary, all that stuff. As part of her performances, she was asked to sing. And I remember just being sat there like, whoa, like how she's just got the confidence to stand there in front of however many people and just reveal her soul through her music is just unbelievable to me. Like I just was so blown away by that. And that I think that echoed around in my mind for a while. And then as my sister got older, she had singing equipment. She had like a little microphone and a little stereo system that she used to use. Sort of when everybody was out the house, that was the only time I felt safe enough to be able to sort of push what I could do.
Wow. So when everyone left the house, you would sneak in to your sisters and sing.
And sing, yeah. That was the only way I felt confident. I think it was just because, as I've gotten older, when you're singing, you're putting your heart on your sleeve. Your voice is your identity, and there's not a lot you can do to change it, really. So if somebody thinks that you've got a terrible voice, it's hard to change that.
Wow, so you kept that hidden all the way through your 20s.
More or less, yeah. My sister had heard me when I thought she was out, had heard me from beyond the door. And I guess she set in motion what is now my career. Because she sort of heard me singing. She put me into a karaoke competition. She didn't tell me, but
oh wow,
yeah, I wasn't impressed at the time.
Wow,
I won't tell you what I said, but yeah, I remember we went down because she again, like, fast forwarding a little bit now, but she was in competitions and little local karaoke competitions, and there was one place in a town by us called North Ferriby, and we were going down to watch her perform, I thought. And we got there and the guy was like, okay, so what are you going to sing? And I was like, don't be daft. It felt like a bit of a sliding doors moment.
Mm.
And I remember I said to the guy, okay, do you have Paolo Nutini, Last Request? And he was like, yeah. So he loaded it up and I got announced onto stage. I was piss wet through with sweat.
I can't imagine.
I was so nervous. And I remember going to the bathroom and I was like, can I escape? Is there a window that I can get out of? And I just remember thinking I'm just going to have to essentially face the music, for one of a better pun. And went back out on stage. And Paul, there were about 8 people in the pub. So it's not as if there were millions watching.
But still.
But that for me felt like millions of people. With music, it's a very emotional performance. It's, especially for me, I find a pocket of my heart or my soul somewhere where I dip in, and and show people what I can do, you know. And I remember singing the song and I was shaky and I was nervous. And then I got into it and you forget that people are there. You know, I went into a place in my mind and started singing the song and it felt really good. And I remember coming to the end of that song and there'd been a tiny pause of silence and that felt like a lifetime.
Wow, because you didn't know what the reaction would be.
Didn't know what it was going to be, had no expectations. And then, yeah, when I got that round of applause, it was like just pure euphoria. I just remember it being like a wave that washed over me, literally from head to toe, goosebumps, just all the way up my body. And like, for the first time in my life, felt real purpose, just real soul yearning purpose. I felt like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
In that moment?
In that one split moment, I was like, this is what I want to do. And from that moment on, my confidence opened up and I stayed in that competition. I came third.
Okay.
And then just doors kept opening, you know, we're in Hull, so it was small doors.
Sure.
But there were doors.
Sure.
You know, and I entered a local sort of, it was the local paper had done a competition called the Hull Daily Mail Star Search competition.
Hull Daily Mail Star Search competition of Hull.
Of Hull. And so I entered into that, and that was much bigger. That was the competition my sister entered me into was a little local pub, you know, so it still felt a little bit homely. This one was, you're on stages, you're in a theatre, you know, you're in venues. So that was a bit of a step up, but I had hunger then. I had an appetite and ambition. And
Can we spend a moment, though,
100%.
on your sister entering you in this? Because I think this is a pivotal moment.
I looked to my sister very much with respect and admiration. I think it was because she entered me in. I thought if she sees something in me, then I should see something in myself. Wow. You know what I mean?
So she believed in you.
She believed in me.
When you didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And she has for my entire life, to be fair to her. You know, growing up, we've always been close. Me and my sister have always been, you know, like two peas in a pod. We used to play together. You know, we've all family holidays, whatever. She's always been a big part of my life.
It's so incredible, too, to see that, you know, you two end up on BGT, which we're going to get to, right? But I'm curious, in that zone before Britain's Got Talent, right? You were then entering yourself into competitions. You were beginning to perform.
Yeah.
I understand you were in a group?
I was. You really have done your research, Paul.
Why did you hesitate on that? You were in a group. Actually, I think you were in two groups.
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I was. One of them was a tribute band,
yes.
which I'm sure you've familiarized yourself with.
Yes.
Maroon 4. Took us a long time to come up with that name.
It's clever.
Yeah, the guys were like Crimson 5, Scarlet 5. I was like, boys, there's 4 others. Like, I'm just doing the maths. We don't have to be called Maroon 5 minus 1. Maroon 4 will do. I remember going to see my grandma and saying, these guys have said about this Maroon 5 tribute band thing. And I was like, I'm not sure. And I've never really played with a band before. And, you know, I don't know if I'm confident enough to do it. And she was like, do it. She was like, the way you're talking about it, she was like, you're yearning for it. Be confident and trust in yourself the way I trust in you. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. And so, yeah, I did my audition and I was accepted in and we started touring as Maroon 4.
Wow. But also, too, is your grandmother said, trust in yourself as I trust in you.
Yeah.
And that, to me, is such a profound statement.
Oh my God, it's so profound. And she was always like that, you know. She was so kind and she was so thoughtful and she's so thoughtful of others, very aware of other people's struggles and worries and problems, and she always tried to make that her responsibility to solve. So yeah, trust in yourself as I trust in you is has echoed around in my mind since that moment.
Yeah, I love it. But did your grandmother pass away?
She did. Yeah, she didn't get to see what I went on to achieve after that. My mum had noticed that she had a bit of a lump on her back, and my grandma was like, "It'll be fine," and we discovered it was cancer. So she went into palliative care, and I remember when I went to go see her when it was sort of near the end of life. And I'd started doing this Maroon 4 stuff. And I said, I don't know if I feel a bit silly. And, I'm pretending to be Adam Levine. I'm nothing like Adam Levine. I'm just Calum. And she was like, that's enough. And she was like, you've got to chase your dreams. You got to keep chasing it. She's like, I know you'll be amazing. And I remember that was kind of like one of the last conversations I had with her was about music, and then was about my sister. And she said, you make sure you look after her. And that they were like the last conversations I had with my grandma, which I'm really grateful for, especially sort of sitting here today, what she's blessed me with, and the effect she's had on my life. It's, profound, and I'm so lucky to have had her in my life.
I got chills when you said that. Now I understand why you continue to look at your sister in that audition.
Yeah.
Because I didn't understand it until what you're saying now.
Yeah.
Now it's hitting me hard.
Yeah. I remember when we did the Star Search competition, that was when there was the shift from my sister was the performer in the family, and then it was me. When we went into the Star Search competition, my sister didn't place. And we'd both applied for X Factor when Mr. Gary Barlow was on there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I got through and she didn't. I didn't make it through to the TV performances, but I was seeing this pattern emerge where I feel like my sister had guided me into this music industry and into this, incredible adventure of life. And I felt like I'd left her behind a little bit. And so Britain's Got Talent was an opportunity for us to change that, because we'd both been accepted to the show.
Wow, okay.
And so we'd done again, there's researchers for the show, and they want to know, like, oh, your brother and sister, have you performed together? And, we rehearsed a couple of songs together in case Simon said, I'd love to hear you sing together.
Interesting.
We were locked in.
So I'm curious, going into Britain's Got Talent, what was your wildest dream?
Even at that point, my cap on what I felt was achievable was so low. I remember on the way to the audition in Manchester, I was in the car with my sister and with a couple of friends of ours, and I said to her, I think the best outcome we can have is some positive criticism from the judges, and we go home and we work on it.
Your dream was some positive criticism.
Bro, I kid you not, I genuinely was sat there in the car saying, we'll get if we take some positive criticism, we might get a little bit of negative criticism, but we'll take the positive criticism, we'll go home, we'll work on it. I obviously just didn't think I was ready. It was a weird day. Because for the first time, I think it had become real. Cameras were around. We'd had like these VT sort of tape-ins where we sort of talked as a family, and they're like, oh, we're going to be a little bit in the distance. You talk to your mum about your audition, how nervous you are and stuff. And it was it felt scripted in the sense of, stand there and talk to your mum whilst we film. But that was the only part of it that was scripted. Everything was real, the way we talked about it, our hugs that we gave each other, all very, very real. And it was when we was backstage, and it was just me and Jade, where she started getting really upset and nervous. And I think that was the first time I ever saw my sister in a slightly vulnerable position.
Why was she nervous?
She was just, I think the weight of the situation had finally dawned on her. I mean, we were both kind of quite happy-go-lucky, and it was exciting, and I'll have, a couple of friends there that was there, and, a couple of family members, and we were all buzzing. We're all in the lobby, there's tons of other people, and, it's Britain's Got Talent, and, all in lights, and I guess the excitement took away from what was about to happen. And then I think when we were backstage and Mum had to be in the audience, and it was just me and her, and the researchers were coming over going, there's the wrestlers on before us.
Wow.
It's Britain's Got Talent.
Well, yes.
So it is literally a plethora of different talent. So
plethora.
There were these wrestlers that were going on, and then they were said, then we'll come to you two. And I think that's when I could see the change. She almost went a little bit wide-eyed and like, oh my God, this is about to happen. Watching somebody who I admire go on stage in front of all those people, I was absolutely busting with pride for her. But I think it was also the magnitude of the fact that she was going to go on and then I was going to go on.
Right.
So I think that was the first time we'd seen the audience, the cameras, the judges in real life.
Are you also thinking about the at-home audience? Because from what I saw in the research is that was the most viewed show
Yeah.
in the UK that year. I think it was over 10 million people watching.
And in BGT's history, the most viewed audition, which is just,
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell?
Yeah. Think about that. Most viewed audition, right? You have the most viewed series. How many people are in the arena that you're performing? It's thousands, right?
Yeah, at least a couple of thousand. Yeah.
So
Terrifying.
this is the largest audience you've ever performed in front of live.
By far. And I think because we was in a theatre and because it was a huge audience, and you've got the 4 judges who we've grown up watching, you know, Simon Cowell and David Williams, and you know, it was, I think that, and we were sat next to Ant and Dec, you know, who we love. So for us, it was very surreal, and I think I, for one, totally forgot about the cameras, and I'm so glad that I did, because it was, for me, it was that moment in that theatre
Okay.
that mattered. It wasn't what's the repercussions of this, who's going to be watching at home. It was very much there and then. And yeah, my sister went on. She sang a Jessie Ware song, and my sister is a little bit like a train in the sense of when she's on the tracks, she's going, but that means if she was slightly off, she's going off.
Okay.
And she was just slightly above it. Simon kind of stopped her pretty soon after she'd started, and he was like, "It's just not working." And I agree with him. She was in a different key, and I wanted her to have her moment, right? So I was quite glad that it stopped her, and then she started singing "With or Without You" by U2, and I thought it was amazing, and they were into it, and the crowd were into it. And I was like, oh my God, thank God. Like, she's getting the reaction she deserves. And then he stopped her again. And that's when he kind of gave his criticism, which was that he thinks that she was a bedroom singer. And there's parts of his voice that he liked, and parts of it he really didn't. And so he said no. And then the judges sort of, after that, you know, waterfall of no's, she came off stage and she just burst into tears. And I was stood with her and like, "So it's going to be all right." And she was like, "No." And she's crying on my shoulder. And then Ant and Dec are going, "I'm really sorry, bro. You've got to go on." So, I mean, it was the most, it's hard to sort of recall how I felt, because it was so like, there's so much pressure.
Sure.
And so much, in that moment, I was a big brother.
Yes.
I was protecting, I was keeping her safe. She was my little sister. She's just been reduced to tears by a grown man. You know, in some ways, I kind of wanted to go out there and give him what for. Verbally.
Yeah, bro,
I'm not a physical person, Paul.
I was gonna say.
Love another fighter. I didn't want to go and slap him or anything. But, you know, I was upset. I was hurt. You know, that was my sister. I could sense that. I was like, I'd started to take my eye a little bit off the ball because she was my priority.
Yes.
And we took a second. I had a bit of a breather. And then I walked out. I'm shaking.
Yes.
You know, and you know, Alicia says, "Oh, you're Jade's brother," and I'm like, "Yeah," and she's like, "You okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then I looked to her, and I looked to her the whole way. I mean, they didn't even pick up how many times I looked to her.
I mean, I did. I did.
Yeah.
I wasn't here in the UK during that time, so you know, I saw your audition, which yes is at almost 400 million views. This in particular, right? And what just screamed at me, and I didn't understand until this conversation, was why you continued to look back.
Yeah.
What was going on in your mind?
I think she was my safe place at that moment. She was the only thing I could see that resembled anything that I knew. None of it was familiar. The only thing that was familiar was my sister in the wings.
Wow.
So she was my only anchor back to my reality.
Did you have a sense of how the audience and the judges were reacting to you, or was your sole focus?
Yeah, it was more on her. I mean, I think I was a little bit sort of starstruck. You know, I've got these, in essence, celebrities in front of me. You know, I was very aware that I was talking to celebrities, and you know, I'm from Hull. you know, our local celebrities were, you know, the bee lady, which was this lady who wore a bee costume who collected for charity. Bless God rest her soul. She was our celebrity. You know, our local news reporter
Right.
was our celebrity. So, you know, even then that would have been cool to talk to them in real life. But you're talking to Simon Cowell, you know, Alicia Dixon. You're talking to these celebrities, and so it was very sort of surreal. But I was so massively aware the full front of my mind was my sister. She's there. She's going to be there. She was crying her eyes out, bless her, but she's there for me.
Yes.
So I felt strong enough to give what I needed to give. And what's funny, Paul, is she goes, right, whenever you're ready. And I say, thank you. And I death stare Simon Cowell. It's like a very small, like half a second. I look to him, and if looks could kill, I'm telling you now, like, you've just made my sister, she's crying her eyes out, man. Like, how dare you do that to her?
Right.
And then you see that, and you'll watch it back, and you'll be like, holy shit.
That's the stare. That's the stare. Do you think did that give you any bit of passion, bravado?
Yeah, a bit of gusto.
Yes.
It wasn't sort of like I'm going to prove you wrong. It wasn't, it didn't give me strength. It just gave me pure emotion. And all those emotions, that kind of chaos, was singing and performing was the perfect kind of vehicle for me to be able to get out how I was feeling. And I don't think I would ever be able to perform it the way I did on that audition again, in the way that I did. You know, there was a moment where the piano comes in, and it's sort of a little interlude.
Yes.
And I show my hand shaking.
Yes.
I think again that I look back again and see my sister, and I smile at her, and I think that was a very human moment in what was a very surreal, out of this world experience for me. I'm just a human being here. I'm not a robot. I'm not a music artist. I'm just a human being, you know?
So my question is who were you showing your hand to? Who in particular? Like, was it yourself, your sister?
Yeah, I guess I was trying to show everybody in that moment, like, just how, and I was actually shaking. That's why I was gripping, when you watch it back, I was gripping the microphone stand so hard, because that was my security blanket. And when I look at my performances now, that security blanket I had throughout, for the first parts of my career, microphone stand, gripping it tight, hiding behind it.
Yes.
It wasn't until probably the last tour that I did, my Bridges tour, where I was able to free myself from that.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is weird looking back on it now, that stayed with me for such a long time. But yeah, it's not as if I was feeling like I was performing to any one person. I was just performing.
You're just performing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you performed one hell of a song.
Thank you.
It was one of those where this shows you my ignorance on Britain's Got Talent. This is true ignorance.
Yeah.
Is so, I'm watching your audition, right? And I think, oh my God. I was like, his voice, he sounds like an angel.
Oh, thank you.
Sounds like an angel.
Thank you.
And I'm watching it with my boys, my two little boys. And then Simon goes over, he hits the golden buzzer. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what's the golden buzzer mean?
Is he in? Is he just lost?
I was like, why is he getting no golden buzzer? Where's all this confetti coming down? Why is everybody so happy? What's the golden buzzer about? Right? But I've now since understood.
It's the kind of the straight through to the finals vibe. Yeah. It was. Do you know what was so weird about that is that obviously you don't necessarily see it on the show, but he had like a bowl of mints, like mint imperials or whatever.
Okay.
And when he stood up, I thought, oh, he's going to go get some mint. So I was completely unaware. And as soon as he pressed that buzzer, you can see like the colour just drain from my sweat, because I'm just like, I thought the guy was just grabbing some mints. Like, what's going on? And the fact that Simon had pressed it was the most coveted prize I could have thinking of getting, because he was an industry label owner for many years with Psycho. So I'd seen everything he'd done, and with X Factor and Little Mix from One Direction and James Arthur, all those acts I'd seen go through with Simon, and so I knew that if I got his approval, I must be doing something right.
But think about this. That song was that a minute? Maybe you were on stage.
It felt like an hour.
So say it was about a minute, right?
Yeah.
So a minute prior, you're giving him a death stare.
Yeah, I know. I asked him about that. I'm like, did you see me when I did that? And he was like, yeah, I did. Yeah.
But then a minute later, he changed your life.
It was almost as if the golden buzzer was him going, I publicly vouch for this guy.
Yes.
It felt like, probably for the first time, somebody giving me, somebody backing me, somebody going, this is, I believe in this person, outside of my family, obviously. It was the first time I'd ever had that in music. So it was a complete life changer. And, obviously after the confetti had settled, he gave me his feedback and he was like, the version was sensational. And he was like, you're not just a singer, you're an artist. And, listening to the judges talk the way they did, Alicia Dixon and David Williams, and they're all saying like, you're already there. I can't see how this would get any better. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like,
right.
Couldn't believe it.
What is the first thing that you say to your sister?
Sorry, was the first thing I said to her. Because I was just so aware that my life had been changed and feeling like I'm just pulling that rug from under her and taking the limelight and taking the spotlight off of her. So sorry was the first thing I said. She was like, don't be daft. And we had a hug and then, we had to let the dust settle a bit. I mean, my mum, bless her, I don't know how she coped in the audience watching her daughter, not get through and get 4 no's, and then, watching me and getting a golden buzzer. And I God knows how she must have felt. Yeah. She must have just been so, like, pulled apart in terms of how she could be, because she wants to be there for her daughter but wants to celebrate with her son. It's like,
yeah, the emotional balance is unreal.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to go back and watch.
Yeah, and you'll see it within a different light now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it is 10 years.
Yeah.
Almost to the week.
Yeah.
Of that audition.
Yeah.
So a decade ago.
Yeah.
Right. When you reflect back now, not just the audition, but the entire experience of Britain's Got Talent.
Yeah.
What did it mean to you in your career?
When I look back now, I mean, it was like the magic beans, Jack and the Beanstalk kind of situation. It was the moment that changed everything for me. I think had I not had that audition, I'd have probably gone back to Hull, Maroon 4, toured that around. I'm sure it would have been a success as well. I'm sure we would have done a great job. But I'm not sure I'd be where I'm at. I was actually literally just over in Montreal on a TV show called Star Academy, which is like their X Factor, The Voice kind of vibe. And I pulled the contestants aside and I just said to them, like, look, this show's very important, but I am here as evidence that there is a career outside of this and there is a future for all of you. And it feels quite life-affirming to sit here and to be reflecting with you on my audition. Yeah. And I'm very grateful for it. I wouldn't change a thing. I feel like, for better or for worse, this audition, it was the start of my career. And I've done a lot of work since to not distance myself from it, but to show people that there is so much more to me than that one moment.
Yeah. Now, did you have this mindset at the end of the series? Because I understand you came in sixth.
I lost to a dog, Paul. But the dog's dead now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Ugh. All right. That's a touchy topic.
It's a little bit sensitive.
Touchy topic. But even, place 2, 3, 4, 5, not to compare. Yeah. Because we know we despair when we compare.
Yeah.
But you came in sixth.
Yeah.
So where were you in terms of your thought with regard to how big and bright your career would be at the end of the series?
Well, so what's funny is we had the semi-final and I sang We Don't Have to Take Our Clothes Off by Jane Stewart. I did a sort of a acoustic-y version, ballad version, as I would later discover is my super talent of taking a fun song and making it depressing. I did a version of that and I won my semi-final. So in some ways, I was given a false sense of security, I guess, into thinking that, oh, maybe I could win this. Simon's there. He's saying, I think you've got this in the bag. I had people saying to me that they'd been to the bookies and put money on me winning.
Wow.
I was the favorite to win on like in the newspapers and in the media. And I'd started to believe it a little bit. And it came to the final. There was a lot of pressure. I was backstage, and I think again, it was the same feeling as the audition. It was the reality of the fact that this was a final where there was a lot of expectation on me. Different from the audition in that sense, but the fear and the panic and the worry was all exactly the same. And I remember going up to my position, and I was thinking, oh, I don't know if I remember the lyrics in the right order, and I was starting to panic. And then there's a scream behind me, and my mum's in the background saying, I know he's going to move away and I'm going to miss him. And she starts crying, and I'm like, oh, I actually can't do this. See all my family in the front row wearing Vote for Calum t-shirts. It was a lot. And I came in, I sang Diamonds by Rihanna, and I just came in wrong. I knew as soon as I started singing that there was something off. And I got to a certain part in the verse, and I'd messed my words, and now I'd consider myself a professional.
Okay.
I tried to.
Okay.
So now I would, if I messed up, you wouldn't know. But back then I didn't know anything.
Okay.
And so the instant disappointment of just being like, I put my head down and I coughed, and there was a gap, and it's so, when I watch it back, it hurts me because it's so obvious that there's a mistake. And I think from that second, within a half a second, it was like, give it all you've got now. That's all you can do. Give it everything. Because I thought, I can't stop. I can't ask to start again.
Yes.
Give it everything. And I sang that last half of the song like my life depended on it. And I remember finishing, and I was so disappointed, and I looked to Simon, and he was the only judge not stood up. And I was broken. I was absolutely shattered. I just thought, the guy who's backed me is disappointed.
Yeah.
And that killed me, Paul. I came off stage, Out and Deck came over. I was so disappointed, and the judges were so lovely. They were like, you're human, and this is what everybody at home is going to see. You made a mistake, you carried on, you picked yourself up, you're not autonomous, you're not a robot. And all the judges had given me a really good critique, and then Simon was like, it was, you messed up. I just hope people see the back half of that performance rather than the front. And I knew I'd lost it. I knew people at home would be like, oh, that's a shame. And they were right. It was a shame that it'd been so much hype, so much sort of riding on that performance, and I messed it up.
You messed it up. Do you feel like that impacted the beginning piece of your career?
Yeah.
It did?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Obviously, they announced that I was sixth. I came off stage, and I tried to see Simon, and he'd gone to his dressing room, and I think, if I'm honest to myself, I think Simon was disappointed. I think he'd backed me and he'd believed in me, and I think he potentially felt like I'd maybe showed him up a little bit, is how I felt about it. And so he went upstairs. Rumour has it that there was a contract on the table waiting for me that got ripped up. Wow. I don't know if that's true or not, but that was the rumour. And I broke down, and luckily we had, the show had an on-hand sort of psychiatrist, because, you get put in this bubble of the TV show and, feeling really important, and media and all this kind of stuff, and then it's done.
It's done.
And so they had to have somebody on hand to be able to deal with that.
When you say you broke down,
Oh my God.
how did you break down?
Oh I was in tears, Paul. I was so disappointed in myself, and I felt like I'd let myself down. I felt like I'd let Simon down, my family.
Wow.
And so I broke down, and the psychiatrist took me in a room, and she was like, please have a cry, like let it out, because there's a lot of emotions, there's a lot going on, there was a lot of pressure. She was like, but please know that you did a phenomenal job, and please be proud of yourself. And so I came around, and we had the wrap party, and I got to spend some time with my mum, and that was really important for me.
Okay.
I did a little video to my fan base saying, I'm sorry I messed it up, and you didn't deserve that. And then we had a drink, and we sort of put that to bed. And it was the next morning that I was just full of anxiety. All the researchers disappeared. I was texting the researchers, is there any press that I could do. You know, I'd love to be able to explain what happened. No replies. You know, didn't have any links to Simon. And this contract that had been ripped up, supposedly so, I thought was the end. So I was on my way up from London back up to Hull, just sobbing my heart out, thinking I'm going to go back to human resources. I'm going to have to ask Maroon 4 if they'll let me back. Very, very realistically thought that that was the end.
Goodness.
And it was awful. It's the worst 3.5 hour journey I've ever done.
How do you then go from that place of now the lowest point in your career, right? How do you go from there to then a record deal?
So I went back up north, and the only person who I still had links with was the music lawyer. You know, as contestants, we were pitched by 2 law firms to represent us, to represent our own interests as well as the show.
Okay.
So we elected a lady called Talia Shelson,
Okay.
who's been my lawyer since.
Wow.
I absolutely love her. And she stood by me. She was like, I believe in you. I'm going to stick by your side. I'm going to help you. She brought me to London. I'd gone up to Hull. Sort of, I thought about maybe going back into work, and I just thought, I just don't know if I can face it. And luckily, Talia had gotten me an agent who'd started getting me some live work from the show. And so my very first performance was for British Airways.
Really?
And I'd done they were unveiling a new plane or something, and they had me in the hangar to sing a couple of songs. And they paid me $2,500.
Okay.
And I was making that a month, maybe less than that.
Oh, wow.
At
Okay.
Human Resources.
So
So
this
as soon as I got the offer, I was like,
huge.
I'm gone. Even if this is the only gig I get, that's a month off of work. So I just said to work, I again, sensible. I said, could I have a career break? Could I pause my position at HR? And they allowed things like that for, you know, going traveling or university. And I think this was such a unique situation that they said, yeah, we're going to put your position on hold, come back in 12 months if you need to. And I realistically had that in mind. And what's funny is fast forward 12 months later, I had a record deal. Dance on My Own was #1 in 24 countries around the world. And they wrote to me saying, so we're expecting you back in work on Monday morning. Honestly, Paul, that was one of the, I've still got that letter today. But yeah, it's surreal thinking back to that. But I'd started to receive a couple more offers, and I'd done a festival. And so I started thinking, okay, maybe all is not lost.
All right.
And I'd found an email from my now manager, Luke Williams, who had said, "Hi Scott, I love your rendition of Dance on My Own. I've seen it on YouTube. I'd love to work with you. Are you currently managed?" And that I'd had that email before the show,
Oh, really?
but I didn't see it, and then I went on the show, and then I couldn't accept it.
So interesting. So Dance with My Own, you had released that on YouTube prior to.
Yeah, so I'd
Okay.
So I'd sang this in the Star Search competition. I'd started using that as almost like my little secret weapon.
Okay.
And then I'd released my own sort of little music video on YouTube. All had to come down obviously when the audition went on, and you know, whatever else. But I remember it's funny, the other day somebody was talking to me about Dance on My Own being a 1 billion stream song on Spotify. And I'd said, I remember very vividly when I put my YouTube video up of Dance on My Own, and I got my first 1,000 views. Paul, when I say I was popping champagne,
Yeah,
I was celebrating hard.
I can imagine.
And it was like, oh my God, 1,000 people have seen my, and now I'm sat with 1 billion streams. It's hard to comprehend.
Oh my gosh! I mean, yeah, the streams that you have, the views is just it's almost unreal.
It's hard to comprehend it. I'm extremely proud. I mean, the numbers are ridiculous.
The numbers are ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, like multi-platinum stuff. It's just like,
Paul,
and also all over the world. Like I was telling you
Yeah.
about this with the research is I see that all over the world, you know, people know you, they know your music. But if you're thinking about just with, you know, the first couple of albums, obviously you have an album coming up,
yes,
right?
very excited.
Right,
about that,
right,
yeah.
which is big.
Mhm.
But when you think of the career thus far, what are the highs and what are the lows?
Ooh, one of the biggest highs for me was when I signed my first record deal. And I think the reason why it was really special was I flew mum over with me and I flew my dad in. And so they were there to witness me putting ink to paper in Capitol Records in LA, iconic building. It was one of the most amazing feelings. Although there was a lot of emotion and there was a lot of like, does he even deserve to be here? The right thing to do was for me to have my mum and dad there. And so I signed my record deal and it was amazing. I stood there arm in arm with my mum and my dad, first time in fact, my entire life, having them both there. You know, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, Katy Perry, Sam Smith, you know, incredible artists that I had the opportunity to sit alongside.
Yes.
Huge moment for me signing that deal.
You know, you talk about how iconic the building itself.
Oh, unreal.
Everyone knows, like, this is
Capitol
history.
Records. I mean, there's Nat King Cole's piano in there. I got the opportunity to sing into Frank Sinatra's microphone, for God's sake. Like, it's just, I knew as soon as Capitol were interested in signing me that was what I wanted to do. I'd been asked by Interscope, Warner, I'd been asked by almost everybody, Disney Records. I think the hype was so unreal on my version of Dance on My Own. It was charting across the world that I think, obviously, everybody wanted to be a part of that. But with Capitol, I did feel a genuine artist relationship. I genuinely felt like they wanted to build a career with me.
Yes.
And they have. I'm still with Capitol Records now. So it was a huge high moment. I think a low moment was probably releasing the next single. We released a single called Rhythm Inside.
Okay.
It's a bit of a bizarre song. I love it, but it's not something that I ever thought I would release as a single. I think at the time we were chasing a tempo record.
Okay.
We wanted to sort of step into that territory. It was important for radio and all those things, and we put Rhythm Inside down as a single, and it just didn't go.
Just didn't go.
And I was devastated. I'd gone from all of that upward success to the first part of rejection that I felt in the industry, and that was hard. That was hard because I think I'd set myself up for expecting success. I sort of, it's a bit of a shortcomings on my behalf, but I think I'd gone from no confidence and that lack of worth, like I explained in my personal life, to suddenly having this purpose and having admiration from people across the world. I couldn't help but believe in myself.
Sure. Do you think you reached a point where you were overly confident?
Probably not necessarily myself, but from the label and from management, I'd been sold that I was going to be, a big hit.
Yeah.
And that was a crushing reality. And I, you know, I look back now on my 10-year career and I wouldn't change anything. I feel like we're products of who we're made by the things that we've been through, good and bad.
Yes.
And I think having that rejection and that failure has set me up to be able to deal with that. And in this industry, it's relentlessly up and down. I guess in all industries, there is that up and down, but in the music industry particularly, those ups and downs are drastic.
Are drastic.
Yeah.
And also, you know, we recently had Estelle.
Oh my God, amazing.
Yeah, amazing voice. And she described the music industry in particular as a death by 1,000 cuts.
Oh my God, yeah. That's a beautiful way to put it. You'll write something that you've cried your eyes out to, and the label will go, oh, it's just not your best work. And that rejection is awful. And, you know, you give it to radio and they go, this isn't what we want to play. It's rejection time and time again. You play a new song to your fans and it doesn't get the reaction that you were hoping for. It's constant feelings of rejection and failures. But you don't, I always think, Ed Sheeran actually said this to me last year, you learn nothing from success. Everything you learn is in failure. And he's 100% right. It's so easy to get caught up in the rejection of it. It's easy to look at things and go, oh my God, I'm never going to have another moment like that. You know, for me, Dance on My Own, as proud as I was of it, it was important for me to be able to equal that with my own music.
Yes.
And so, you know, Rhythm Inside was a single we put out, and then I think another single called What I Miss Most that we'd done with the Max Martin crew, and that everybody believed, you know, because it was Max Martin sort of approved that it would do so well. And I just think that people around the world wasn't expecting me to do tempo. They were expecting me to make them cry.
Yeah, because that's the most prevalent comment that I see on your video is how the song made the person feel emotionally.
Yeah.
But in particular, it's introspective or sad or or love, but it's tears.
Yeah.
It's like you make them cry.
I make them cry, and I'm darn good at it.
You are damn good at making people cry.
Getting people depressed. I used to cover songs by Bublé and Sinatra and Robbie Williams, and maybe I thought I could be a bit of a crooner. Then Ed Sheeran and Paolo Nutini and James Bay and all of these sort of contemporary guitar playing artists that were in the charts. But my musical influences come from my mum, and that was, we'd sit in the car listening to Whitney Houston and Celine Dion and Tina Turner, those big, powerful female voices that just soared, the vocals would just take you on a journey. And I knew that deep down in my heart, even though I tried to, squash my mum's music taste down because I didn't think it was cool, and I used to listen to Backstreet Boys and, Britney Spears and NSYNC, and, I think in my mind I wanted to be a pop artist. It was the ballad stuff that I just yearned for.
The ballads, yeah. Talked about how you would stand behind the mic stand, right? And you were able to break free. Is that how you were able to break free?
Yeah, I think tapping into what I knew was the biggest thing for me. I guess when you get signed, there's a lot of expectation, and you wanting to be a pop star, and the label kind of put you on these TV shows where you're wearing amazing costumes and you're performing your songs. And I think there's a need to want to market you, right? As any business would with product.
Yes.
You want to make it shiny and beautiful, and you want people to see it far and wide and it be popular. And I think that's harder to do with sad songs. Singing something that felt true to me was what gave me the confidence. And I think we'd recorded You Are the Reason. You Are the Reason was kind of one that me and my manager really believed in. But the label were like, we need tempo. We need to break you out as a pop artist. And so that was the first time I ever felt confident enough to challenge. I'd been signed by this label. How could I dare stand up to them and say what I think I should be doing? But that was the first time I thought, I do really believe in this song, and I really want you to believe in it with me. And they were like, okay.
Okay, they allowed you.
Okay, if you really believe in it that much, we'll put it out.
What was it specifically about You Are the Reason that gave you the confidence to push back for the first time?
I think I felt about You Are the Reason the same way that I felt about my version of Dancing on My Own. I'd heard this sort of piano rendition that somebody had played, just like a piano accompaniment, by this gent on YouTube, and I sang on top of that.
Okay.
And when I sang that version, a huge fan of Robin, huge fan of the original, I had the opportunity with the piano version of it to give the song a new soundscape, and for me to be creative rather than, when I was singing Fly Me to the Moon, when it's all swing and you've got you have to sing it in a certain style, and I would end up sounding like Sinatra. And so I remember recording it and just thinking, there's something really special in this. And I played it to my mum and she'd cry, and I played it to my sister and she'd cry. And then I started using that as my superpower. When we recorded You Are the Reason, I felt exactly the same way.
I love all of those influences. You were talking about Celine Dion to NSYNC. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's a range.
It's very it's very diverse.
Oh my gosh, this is a full range. I hope you won't mind that we're taking a quick break from this conversation to talk about my show sponsor, Shopify. So many of you who listen to this show every week also run your own small businesses or side hustles. And we all know that these days, having a business without a website is almost impossible. But getting an online store up and running isn't always an easy or quick task. Unless you're using Shopify, the all-in-one commerce platform to help you start, run, and grow your business. Shopify simplifies everything so you can sell online and through your social media channels. And all of their templates are customizable, so you can explore thousands of different designs to find the one that best represents your brand. You can even leverage their tools without having to learn new skills in design or coding. If you've been looking for a solution, Shopify is the answer. Visit shopify.co.uk/need to talk to enjoy a £1 per month trial period. That's shopify.co.uk/need to talk. No matter how much you plan, sometimes a date just doesn't go the way you imagined. Maybe you picked the worst seats at a gig, ones that are so bad you can't even see the stage. Or you thought that live drawing class would be fun, until you realized the model was a very nude, very old man. Yeah, awkward. But you know, dates don't have to be perfect to be great. Because if you're with the right person, even the hiccups become part of the story you'll both laugh about later. And that's what Tinder is all about, and a sponsor of this podcast. You might think it's just for hookups, but in fact, on Tinder, a relationship starts every 3 seconds. So forget about planning the perfect date and just pick the right person to go on it with. It starts with a swipe. Download Tinder today. Now, you're the reason also, because I feel like now I'm a proficient Calum Scott. I've got everything right. With You Are the Reason too is the lyrics.
Yeah.
Did you write You Are the Reason?
Helped.
You helped write.
Yeah, there's an amazing producer I have now brought in as an exec on my upcoming album. He's called John Maguire.
Okay.
Incredible. He's the Bernie Taupin to my Elton John, and another amazing songwriter that I've worked with called Corey Sanders.
Okay.
And so it was the three of us. You Are the Reason was more or less there when I got involved, but they needed something to finish it. And so that was where I was able to step in and sort of have a hand in that. And it also changed from it being about anxiety to it being about love. I mean, shocker. I step on it and said about love.
Of course.
Of course it was. But it was special to me for a couple of different reasons. You know, again, it brought me back to what I love, but having a hand in the writing of that and knowing that it was special sort of gave me a new confidence.
Yes.
Because it was, for me, even if I put it out and it didn't do well, it was me sort of creating a statement of this is the kind of music that I want to put out.
Yes.
This is what I want to be known for.
Yes. And even, you know, even I would say beyond the style, right? You think about You Are the Reason. It's about love.
Yeah.
Okay. It's about romantic love.
Yes, it is.
All right. About romantic love with whom?
Well, at the time, I was desperately single, Paul. So for me, it was almost like trying to bring it into reality, almost a manifestation of just being like, I want to sing this song to somebody and for them to feel the same way about me as well. And I've had a rough time with relationships. I've had a rough time with romance, considering I write romantic music. I've had a bit of a rough time. I suppose, you know, it points to a lot of stuff that, you know, growing up, I had a lot of internalized homophobia because I sort of was abandoned by my friends when I came out as being gay.
Wait, can we even jump into that?
Yeah.
Because so we're back into Hull.
Yeah.
Okay. And I picture the way that you've described it is, I mean, you know, the boys are boys, the lads.
Yes.
They're not boys, they're lads.
Yeah.
Right. And you were a lad.
I was, yeah. I mean, I was a skateboarder. I wasn't afraid to fall and injure myself, and you know, I was one of the boys. It was all of us. Was, you know, there was no girls in our group at all. So it was all just lads that used to build tree swings and, you know, and go out into the field and build dens and skateboard and BMX and stuff. It was all very sort of laddie in that way. You know, back then, I mean, I was 13, 14 years old. I wasn't even looking in that direction. I wasn't even thinking about girls or sex or anything like that. It was very much like I'm with my boys. Innocently, I guess. And it was only when my mates started getting girls in our group and part of our group that I was a bit like, you know, like, oh, girls suck. Like, I just want to skate and they're taking attention away from us. And then, you know, then it would be like, oh, well, Sophie's got a friend that thinks that you're good looking, and why don't you get with her? And then it was questions, and it was like, why do you not want to have a girlfriend? And I was like, oh, I'm skateboarding, I'm fine. They was like, yeah, but like you're just going to be the only one that done, and it's weird. And I think that sort of questioning had gone deeper than I had thought it would.
Okay.
And I'd go home and I'd think about it all the time, and it come to a point where I wasn't eating properly, I wasn't sleeping properly, and I was getting ill with it. I was questioning myself at a young age about why I was different.
So you felt different. How?
I just felt like I all of a sudden didn't fit in, didn't feel like I belonged. All of a sudden, all I wanted to do was feel part of something. So then, as soon as there was the questions about why I didn't want this, why I didn't want that, I felt segregated, and immediately all that fear and all that anxiety and worry about self-worth all came back. There would come a point where I was with one of my friends sat up on this half pipe, and we was just talking, and it came up again, and I was just so down and fed up of the questioning. When he asked me, I was like, I don't know if I'm interested in girls. And he was like, what, are you trying to tell me you're gay? And in that split second, I felt like my world was either going to change drastically, or I would hide it and I would take that darkness and I would live it alone. So I made the decision to say, maybe. And he was like, all right. And then he skated away and he told all the other boys. And then we all went home. And then the next day, nobody came to call for me. Nobody came to walk me to school. And I went up to school and none of them wanted to talk to me at lunch. And, that was my whole life was my friendship group at that point. So for me, that my life was ruined from something I didn't even really understand. And that was horrible. That was probably one of the lowest times in my life, I'd say, personally. Just feeling like all that rejection, all of those doubts about self-worth just came straight back to self. There was almost proof that I don't deserve love, that I'm not enough, that, all the things that I was trying to tell myself I wasn't, that was, for me, was clear proof that, I wasn't worth it.
Who do you, or who did you go to in that time?
So we've gone from a fun-loving, big energy with the guys to then, being the polar opposite of that. A couple of people had started to notice, and one particular guy had come up to me and he'd said, like, I've just noticed that you're like on your own a lot more and stuff like that. Is like everything cool? And I was like, yeah. Obviously, didn't want to say anything to anybody else for fear that that might happen again. And he was like, do you mind me asking you a personal question? I was like, yeah. He was like, are you gay? So I was like, no, I might bi probably or something. He's like, I'm gay. And I was like, oh. And for a second, I was like, oh, okay, I can relate now. I feel like I'm part of something again.
Right.
And I mean, we were best friends for a long time. And after Britain's Got Talent, we drifted, which was sad. But he saved me, I'd say. He saved me from myself. He saved me from the darkness that I was feeling, because I had somebody who I could relate to. He was unforgivingly himself. He was unapologetically himself, and people knew that he was gay, and he was like, I don't care. And that confidence, it was like looking at my sister again.
Right.
It's like somebody who is just confident enough to be able to show their heart and soul to people, and to just be like, I don't give a fuck.
Right. Right. But you were, at that time, though, you had still not publicly stated.
No.
And I think that internally you were questioning yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you thought maybe I'm bisexual.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you begin to then truly identify sexuality?
You as kids, like, you'd see FHM magazine, or you'd see, the magazines that my mate's dad would have.
Right.
And you'd look through and you'd see stuff and it'd be like, I wouldn't feel any way about it. And so then you start thinking, okay, well, maybe I am gay then. And then, I'd start to explore that. And I found quickly that I was more attracted to men than women. Still, I'm attracted to women, but just not as much. And I think, I still wasn't confident in my sexuality. And in fact, because of the loss I'd had with my friends, I resented that part of myself. And had done for a long, long time. I think I would say in the last, 5 years, have just gone full 180 on it. And I'm like, I love who I am.
But that's only in the last 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
So in your teens,
Truly
in your 20s.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that friendship group that you had, they never came back.
No. And I look on it now and I go, I don't blame them. We were young. Sometimes what you don't understand can scare you. And I don't feel anything towards that. I don't hate them. I'm not sort of, like I said earlier, I wouldn't change it because I am who I am because of that experience. And I have the compassion and the love and the need to want to help other people through their situations because of what I've experienced. So I wouldn't change it. And so in that way, I don't resent them. And, we've seen each other out since and it's fine.
It's fine.
But there was a lot of hate, a lot of internalized hate for a long, long time. And I always used to tell people if I could, almost like a matrix, red and a blue pill, if I could take a pill and get rid of being gay, I'd do it instantly. Wow. Now, I'd bat them out of your hand.
Right. Even human resources, you were still
sort of in the closet. Well, I still felt uneasy about it. And I still used being bi as a cushion because it made me feel like, oh, well, I like women as well. Yeah, I definitely like women as well. It gave me almost like a norm at the time, I felt like. So that for me felt like an easier to digest statement of being like, I'm bi. And personally speaking. And, so I got a girlfriend.
Did you?
I was with her for a long time, up until prom. And then, understandably, on prom, she wanted to lose her virginity to me. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do that to her. I couldn't even entertain the idea of it because I loved the girl. And we grew up together and went through school together. And she was, I'd centered my friendship around her and, me, Dan, and her and, other people created a friendship group. So it was very much a integral thing for me to have her and to have that friendship group. But I couldn't lie to her like that. I'd been lying to her for a while anyway.
So what did you tell her?
We had a conversation and I told her the situation and she was so upset. And I get it. Like, she immediately felt like she was not worth it and that I didn't, love her, and she took it personally. And I totally understand. And it was wrong of me to lie to her, and to pretend that I was straight when I obviously wasn't. So she took it hard, but we were great friends, so we were able to get through it. And it meant a lot to me to get through it with her. And she was beautifully sort of graceful in the way that she didn't make a big deal out of it. She didn't tell everybody, she was just like, we're broken up, and I've got so much respect for her.
Yeah, because I can imagine it's a small town.
Yeah, it's like 250,000 people. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a big city,
But you still kept that to yourself. You still went under the quote unquote cushion of I'm bi.
Yeah.
So how does this then impact you on Britain's Got Talent?
Good question. When you're gay, if you're not comfortable with it, you feel that you have to come out again and again and again. For somebody like myself, people would make assumptions that I was straight. And I would have to say, like, oh, actually, no, I'm bi and whatever. And I used that excuse a lot. Or I would do this thing where my media trainer thinks that it's perfect that I did this, but I would answer a question without answering it. So you would say to me, oh, have you got a bed? And I'd be like, oh, I'm far too busy. I've got all this stuff going on. And the question about the girlfriend is over there. And we're talking about like work and other things.
Exactly.
So I used to be able to dodge quite a lot of questions. When it came to Britain's Got Talent, oh my God, I remember this so vividly. I haven't thought about this in a long time, Paul. There was a Britain's Got More Talent segment that I did with Stephen Mulhern. And he came over and he said, right, got Calum Scott, Golden Buzzer here, Sam's Golden Buzzer. We're going to play a quick game. So I was like, all right, yeah, okay. He's like, you're going to describe your perfect girlfriend to me and I'm going to draw her. On cameras.
Oh my goodness.
So I was like, fuck, I'm going to have to just go with it. Because by then, the nation's watching me. I'm already in the closet. I was like, I can't on TV be like, oh, actually, I like guys. So it was so painful because he was like, I think there is a video of it somewhere. He's like, oh, tall or short? And I'm like, tall and hairless. She's like, blonde or brunette? I'm like, brunette? And it's like, you know, we started going through these traits and I thought, I felt like a fraud. And he showed me the thing and he said, does this look like your girlfriend? And I was like, I said, yeah, a little bit. And he's like, what's her name? And I was like, oh, I'm not saying it out loud. And he was like, whisper it to me. And I was like, oh, it's Cassandra. And he goes, Cassandra, to the cameras. She was devastated when she saw that because by that time, we'd broken up. And I felt like I'd used her as a way of me disguising myself.
Yes.
And I had a lot of making up to do with her. She'd lost a lot of confidence in me, and rightly so. That wasn't nice to do that. Even though nobody else knew, she and I knew, and that was enough. So that it was awful. And then news publications would run stories, and the media was asking a lot about it's a lot of tabloid press. So it was like, asking about relationships and stuff like that. And I remember going into Virgin, who look after me in the UK, and broke down. I was like, I just don't know if I want to talk about my sexuality, and yet everybody's asking.
Right.
And I sat down and her name is Janet. She was lovely. She sat with me and we had a little cry and she just gave me the confidence. She was like, we will do whatever you want to do, however you feel comfortable. We could go to a gay publication and we could give them an exclusive, but we make it very much about the music and we talk about how amazing your career is and we kind of weave into there about the sexuality, or we don't talk about it at all. It's up to you. So we chose to do a piece with Attitude magazine.
Okay.
And the piece was so well written that it kind of went under the radar.
Interesting. So you're still not...
So by then I'm like, fuck, I'm going to have to do it again.
Yeah.
It was not until I'd written a song with Toby Gad called No Matter What. And the session itself was in LA. Toby's worked with, he's all of me with John Legend and, big writer.
Yeah. So
I was obviously cacking my pants. I'm like, this is a big writer. Like, what am I going to do? So he sat with me and he played some chords and he was like, are you feeling anything? And I was like, oh, a little bit. And he was like, I'm just going to leave these chords playing. I'm going to go off and do something and I'll come back. And in that time, I felt so magnified. The responsibility on me to write in that moment was horrendous. I usually write with 2 people, 3 people. So to do it alone was traumatizing.
Sure.
I mean, I'd text my A&R and I was like, I need to go. This is awful. I'm in the room by myself. Toby's left. We're like, what do I do? He's like, just try. It's like, give me 15, 20 minutes. And if in 20 minutes you still feel comfortable, we'll pull you out. So you've got to do something. So I sat there and I started noodling around the idea of my coming out story, about how, I'd come out to my friends and it wasn't the best, but I'd come out to my mum and she said she loved me no matter what. And so I'd started writing to that, and it was very honest, and it was the first time I'd ever written that level of complete honesty and transparency. But it felt good to think about it and to start writing about it. And Toby came in and we started to finesse the idea, and I wrote this song called No Matter What. And it was, as soon as I wrote that, although there was some fear about releasing it and some worry about what it would do, I feel like that gave me a complete suit of armor. It was like the holy grail for me because it enabled me to be truly myself without any judgment on myself, without any hatred on myself. And I knew more than that it wasn't just my story. It would be millions of people around the world.
Exactly.
And honestly, Paul, the messages I still get of just people being like, this saved my life. This is the song that I sent to my mum and it helped me come out. This is the song I sent to my daughter and now we have an amazing relationship. I get messages every day about No Matter What. And by far today is the song I'm most proud of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. You mentioned in that you came out to your mother and she said, of course.
Yeah.
I knew moms would say.
She she goes, I had an inkling. Of course she did.
Of course
she did.
Yeah.
It was lovely. I mean, she had a little bit of a moment because she at that point she was like, I really want to be a grandma. I was like, that can still happen.
Yes.
She was worried that she wouldn't be able to be the grandma for my kids in the way that my grandma was for me. In every other sense of the word, she's like, I couldn't care less.
Yeah.
She was like, I love you no matter what, like for the rest of time. So she was like, nothing you could say or do would ever stop me loving you. So that was a big deal for me.
Just a quick one before we get into the next section. Calum speaks about his mental health and having suicidal ideations. If this is a tough topic for you, please take care while watching. We've also added links to support charities in the episode description. One thing that I did not know until we had Jojo Siwa as a guest, 75% of LGBTQ plus community felt the need to hide their identity. 75%.
Yeah, that's overwhelming.
It really hit me, thinking about that.
Yeah.
And as a result of hiding identity, there becomes just this avalanche of other issues.
Yeah.
Right. And it seems like you've experienced many other issues, not just as a result of hiding identity, but just as a result of the abandonment that you talked about earlier, the stress, etc. So what are some of those other challenges that you've had in your life?
It was compounding issues of abandonment, self-worth, low self-esteem, no confidence. And I'd gotten so far into my 20s and I started drinking a lot and it come to a point where it was getting quite dark for me. These compounding issues were starting to really take control. And I'd started to develop what I later found out was body dysmorphia. So I found myself inspecting my body. It got into a point where I would get my bedside lamp and I would shine it on my skin and on my body. And if I found something that I didn't like, an artifact or a freckle or a mole or whatever it was, I would write it down in this notepad that I kept by my bed. So I came to a point where I would go to bed and I would torture myself with this ritual of reading all these things that I hated about myself. And I wasn't fair. I didn't write anything I liked. Everything was just, I couldn't stand myself. I'd get to a point where I would be stood in the mirror and I would be going, you ugly, disgusting, nobody loves you. You're gay, you've lost all your friends, you'll never have a relationship. And I was so unkind to myself, and I'd gotten to a point where, because I was drinking and because I'd not dealt with other emotions that was going on, and I'm a sensitive boy as it is anyway, it had just gotten very, very dark. And there came a point where I would just think to myself, I cannot see this getting any better. And so there was a couple of times I would just leave the house and I would go off. And I would almost not know where I'd be going. I would just go. And there was one time that I left and I had found myself on a bridge. And I remember kind of looking over the other edge and just contemplating everything and being like, what's the point? What's the point? I hate myself. I hate who I am. I hate that I'm gay. I hate that I've lost all my friends. I hate that my dad isn't here. And I was hating on myself so much that I looked over the other edge and had almost made a promise that I was going to jump. And having sort of, in that moment, having looking over the other side, the first person that came into my mind was my mum. And I just thought, if I throw myself over this bridge now, what will that do to her? She'd never forgive herself, and she'd lose her son, you know? So for me, it was a non-negotiable. I was like, I can't do that. Can't do that to her. She's everything to me. And so I sort of came back and I went home and I didn't tell her. And the next day I got up to go to work and I was sat in my car and I just broke down into tears and I just thought, I can't deal with this. I can't deal with it on my own. And so I called my doctor's surgery and I said, I'm so scared that if I don't see somebody, I'm going to do something stupid. And they got me in that week and I went to go and see an NHS counsellor. And I told my mum, I had to tell my mum, and she came with me and she held my hand through the first session and it was lovely that she was there for me. And she was devastated, you know, because she'd just heard her son was going to try and kill himself. So it was a lot. But you know, we sat and we talked through the whole thing, and you know, we came away from it a little bit lighter, and then we went again, and you know, I would start to explain about my body dysmorphia and stuff like that, and my mum would be like, "Don't be so stupid. You look beautiful." Like, and the counsellor would be saying like, "I know that you're doing a lovely thing, but by saying don't be stupid, you're kind of making him feel worse in some ways." So then we made the decision for mum to not be part of the sessions, and from that point onwards, I grew a lot. I was able to talk about my dad. I was able to talk about my sexuality. And I think when I'd started to talk about that stuff, I just noticed that when I was going home, I wasn't reaching for that notepad as much. And when I was writing things down, I wasn't writing as much. And it became less and less of a tool. And I just started to love myself a little bit more, you know, and not give myself so much of a hard time, you know. So it was a real turning point. Therapy has completely changed my life. You know, I've gone from wanting to kill myself to wanting to, you know, be a beacon of hope for people and, you know, wanting to be a light. And actually, whilst I was at Human Resources, I started looking into university courses of how to be a counsellor.
Oh, wow.
Because I was so inspired and so moved by what he was able to do for me. I was like, that's what I want to do for somebody else.
Yes.
And that in some ways, I found myself in that sort of a role.
Yeah. I was going to say, Calum, you do this through your music.
Yeah.
So with regard to suicidal thoughts, I'll call it ideation, because there's different levels. And that's something that I didn't quite understand, is that there is the idea of suicide. There's then the plan of suicide. And then the greatest level is you have the idea, you have the plan, and then you have the intent.
Right.
So there's various stages. But what I didn't know was the disproportionate allocation, should I say, of reported suicidal thoughts within the LGBTQ plus community.
Right.
So in the UK, 44% of LGBTQ people reported suicidal thoughts.
Wow.
44%. That's compared to 26% of heterosexual non-trans respondents.
Wow.
13% of LGBT plus aged 18 to 24 have attempted to take their own life in the past year. 13%.
Jesus Christ.
I mean, it's just the numbers are shocking.
Yeah.
LGBTQ plus young people are more than 4 times as likely to attempt to take their life than their peers.
Which is heartbreaking. You concern yourself so much with other people's opinions that you forget about sort of loving yourself.
Right.
And so the statistics, as disgustingly shocking as they are, I can understand.
Yeah. But I tell you what, you know, in terms of one thing that's also important to me is allyship.
Yes.
Right. And I constantly ask, like, what could be done? What could be done? What could be done? But it goes back to something that I have begun to have conversations with my boys about, because as I begin to understand if they're leaning into a particular sexuality,
Mhm.
right, is at the end of the day, don't be the one in the group who walks away.
Right.
Don't be that one.
Right.
You know, that's where it all begins.
Yeah. Yeah.
And quite honestly, that's where it ends.
Yeah.
But it also shows you the importance of having a group of peers,
Yeah.
right, that you love,
100%.
and that who love you.
Yeah.
And on that note, I have another surprise for you.
Oh God.
Are you ready for this?
Yes.
Are you sure you're ready?
I mean,
Callum, are you sure? I feel like this is your life.
please welcome.
All right, here we go. This is, you ready for this?
Maybe.
Okay, here it goes.
Hello, my little spring chicken. It's your best here and special guest Jax.
Oh.
I don't think anyone quite has a friendship like ours. It has so many different levels to it. And you truly, truly inspire me every single day because of that. You deserve all of your success and more. We have made the most incredible memories together. When I am with you, I smile from ear to ear. I form abs in my cheeks, and it truly is the most fun. But above all else, and the thing that I think is rare in a friendship that me and you most definitely have, is that raw, authentic, honest, emotional connection. And I love you so much.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for that. I broke. Ah, God, I love that woman so much. She's incredible. That's my best friend Jess. Thank you for that. That was lovely. She throughout my throughout my sexuality issues, throughout the issues with my dad, throughout my career, she's just been such a rock.
I think that this is almost a lesson that you could teach us all, is that when you have a friend, a loved one who is going through a storm, going through a tough time,
Mhm.
how do we support that friend? How do we do it?
I think in a lot of these storms, what somebody wants is just that company, just that reassurance. I think some people sometimes don't want to go through what they're going. You talk about what they're going through. Some people don't want to sit down and explain how they're feeling. They just want that presence of that warmth of somebody. And I think with Jess, she has very openly talked about her diagnosis of FTD, which is frontal temporal dementia. She's been very public with it. She's got a blog. It was FTD and Me because it was the story of her mum and the journey that she'd gone through with her mum, and then heartbreakingly, she got diagnosed with the same illness, and so now it's become her journey. And then she's just done an incredible thing with Greg, my other best friend, her husband, of IVF, and the chances of baby Jax being born was so slim, but they've removed that bad gene from that bloodline, and now Jess's family forever going forward has that gene removed, which is incredible. Speaks volumes about Jess and Greg. But I think I think with me and Jess, the big thing about that is just being there is enough sometimes.
Yes.
Riding that storm with them is enough.
Yes, I'm with you. It's one of those where when we hold space for someone, we don't have to attempt to resolve their
No.
issue or come up with a fix.
Yeah.
It's just being present.
Yeah.
With them.
Yeah, talking about it, sometimes helps. Sort of maybe trying to distract sometimes helps, but I think that presence of being like, I am here for whatever you need me for. If you want to sit and you want to cry on my shoulder for an hour and a half and talk about it, if you want to go to those break rooms where you can smash stuff,
Something.
Yeah, whatever it is you want to do to help you get through it.
I think we should give some spotlight to FTD.
Yeah.
Because I was not aware of it.
Yeah.
Although now through the research, I understand this is exactly what happened to Bruce Willis.
Yeah, he diagnosed the same.
So what, if you could describe, what is FTD?
Jess will kill me if I don't get this right, but as I know it, and I'm not a specialist by any stretches, but it's called frontotemporal dementia, and it is a condition that it's almost an inevitability, which is in itself very cruel. Jess's mum had been diagnosed after multiple misdiagnoses of, of forgetfulness or age, or there were certain behavioural things that she was displaying that the doctors were saying it's nothing. Turned out to be FTD, and it's a form of dementia that's quite aggressive. If I'm right, it affects your behaviour first, and so Jess's mum had started to really change in the way that she'd gone from being a very chatty, happy-go-lucky, thriving member of the community to actually quite catty and a little bit nasty and very reserved, wouldn't go out. And Jess was like, there's just more to this. And she sort of forced her mum to go to the doctors, and they did some tests and they found that she had this gene. And so Jess had started a blog called FTD and Me.
Okay.
And she just detailed sort of the journey that she'd been on with her mum. And it's rough. I mean, she goes through that blog and it's an incredible read. You just see the compassion of Jess, and you also see the real effects of what happens to somebody who's been diagnosed with FTD and who eventually will pass away with it. Jess then sort of got tested and she has the gene. Her brothers have been tested and they have the gene. So she's in a position now where FTD and Me has become her journey. Yes. And it's cruel. And she's an absolute superstar. She lives life to its fullest because she knows there's going to be a time when she forgets who we are and she starts to lose her memory, and that's heartbreaking. Yeah. And so until it has to become real for us at the minute is it's off in the distance.
It's off in the distance, yeah.
But it's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, I can't imagine. But out of respect for Jess and you, I'm going to read the blog. We definitely will. Here's some research on FTD. FTD is a less common type of dementia. Around 1 in 30 cases of dementia in the UK. Mm-hmm. So that equates to roughly 31,000 people in the UK today living with FTD.
Wow.
Right. Significant number.
Really significant.
And we'll definitely, and also in the description, we'll make sure that we add,
so lovely, yeah.
add a link for that.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for sharing that, because it's discussing mortality, is such a challenging topic.
Oh my God, yeah.
And as I get older, as my parents get older, as I see those loved ones in our family passing away, mm-hmm. All of my grandparents have passed away at this point. And it's one of those where what I've realized is that we, at least I'm speaking for my families, we need to talk about this more.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need to have these conversations more.
There is a song on the on this new album, and it speaks to that fragility of life in quite literal terms. And it came from a conversation I had with my producer, John, and he has 2 little girls. And I said to him, I was thinking this the other day, I was like, isn't it so wacky that one day you're going to pick up Millie and you're going to give her a kiss and a cuddle and something, and you're going to put her back down and you'll never pick her up again. Not through choice or anything, just the fact that that'll be the last time, So I think, when I wrote that with John, it was like a kind of, there's it's a sentiment of, really feeling fulfilled.
Yes.
Whether that's through love or through family or through career or opportunity. I just think, that song speaks to that. So yeah, I totally agree.
Yes. And I think it allows us to have one more chance at it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you what I mean is this happened to me, Calum, yesterday.
Okay. All right.
Yesterday, I'm in the park with both of my boys.
Okay.
I have an 11-year-old and I have a 14-year-old.
Right.
Now, my 14-year-old is almost my height.
What?
Right. He's a tall one. So he comes over and he says, "Dad, can I get on your back? Do a back ride?" I was like, "You're too big, man. What are you talking about? I should be riding on you." What are you talking about? This is absurd. This is crazy. And then I walk away and I say, no, we're not doing it. Get back home. I say, you know what? I should have put that boy on my back.
Yeah.
you know? And it was one of those where, and I still haven't done it. Actually, I think I'm going to do it tonight now.
Just worry about your knees. Just make sure you brace.
But the reason why I thought about it in the evening is I thought, you know what? I wonder if this is the last back ride.
Yeah.
Because I can't remember the last time I did pick him up. So I want that experience.
Yeah. And you're so right. The new album actually is kind of a reflection of that. It's called Avenoir. And it sort of speaks to, I was reading a book by an author called John Koenig, who's written this book called The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows.
Oh, wow.
And it's this thing where he's been able to describe something or a feeling with a word that we haven't yet created. And it was when I was like having a bit of a doom scroll through Instagram. I was probably sat on the toilet at the time, Paul. And I was having a look through and I saw it and I was like, ooh, that's a word I've never seen before. And I started reading into it, and he says about how we move through life as a rower moves, moving forward but facing backwards. And it's a younger version of us that steers the boat, but we don't know what's coming. And I instantly had in my mind, you know, how that looks and how that looks to me. And he sort of talks about Avenoir being the desire to be able to look around and see your memories coming towards you.
This is the inspiration.
So this is the inspiration for the album.
Genius.
I know.
Genius.
And it's like, what I think is so crazy about it is when I was thinking of that concept, I thought if I could turn around and see what was coming,
yes,
would I? And I think, you know, there's a lot of reflection on the album, and there's a lot of like, you know, I've written about sort of sorrow, and I've written about regret, and I've also written a song to my future baby, a song on the album. And there's a lot of looking at the polar opposites, and not a lot of sort of living in the now. And I think to myself, if I could see what was coming, I wouldn't be hopeful. I wouldn't be ambitious. I wouldn't ever have any surprise.
Sure.
And I think, you know, the twists and turns of life, for better or for worse, is what makes life so fragile. It makes it worth living.
It is.
It makes it magical. Yeah. And it does sort of remind us to live every moment.
Absolutely. I am going to give my son that back ride.
Yes, please.
Today.
Yes.
Today. That's the first thing that I'm going to...
He's going to be like, what?
What are you doing?
Okay.
Yeah. You know what I love there too is that you said you were doom scrolling on the toilet.
Yeah.
Because in my research, I see that you've said this. If you can maybe clarify this, is that you have a you know where I'm going with this? A pre-show ritual.
Oh God! How did we end up here? I'm in tears.
You brought it.
Jess is there, and now I'm talking about pre-stage poops. Yes,
But is this your ritual?
Very real ritual.
Are you serious?
And I vowed that I would, anytime I was asked if I had any pre-stage rituals, I would always be honest. So in my transparency, and for the benefit of anybody watching and listening, yes, I have this pre-stage poop that I have to have. It's almost like habitual. I don't even think about it anymore. It just happens.
It just happens. Okay.
I just have to go there. I think there's probably more to it than just needing to take a shit.
Yeah.
For want of a better word.
It's definitely psychological.
Yeah. I think it's psychological. I think it's alone time as well. I think it's having some space away from the energy in the dressing room. It's a moment for me to just be alone and have my own thoughts. And the obvious as well. There was a moment when we were in Portugal and I was doing a festival, and obviously the only on-site facilities was a Portaloo.
Okay.
And the Portaloo was sort of sat backstage by the stage. And so I'm sat on the toilet having my pre-stage poo, and the crowd had started to become a little bit impatient, so started chanting my name. I'm sat there taking a dump with people going, Calum. I've never felt more encouraged in all of my life.
Oh my gosh.
It took me back to when I was a little boy.
Honestly, I don't know. That would probably make me nervous. Like I can't go.
I can't go. Yeah. I've got shyness, but yeah.
So you really do have this. It's interesting.
It's a real thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I'd like to say that I have some sort of like, I go around with some burning incense, or I have like gargle some honey and manuka and those things as well. But the pre-stage poo.
Pre-stage poo.
All right. That's the pinnacle.
I love it. All right. So I have two quick categories.
Okay.
All right. This one is super quick. This is just, you are now booed up.
Okay.
And you are in love.
Okay. Okay.
right?
Yep.
Okay. The second is you mentioned you want to be a father.
Yeah.
All right. Where's the desire to be a father? Where does that come from? Because we're living in a day and age where there is a decline in the percentage of people who are interested in having children.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yes. So you're in a space where you actually want to have a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why?
I've always had a nature of wanting to look after. And I think being a dad for me is sort of, I think, an extension of the safety that I want to create that I've had all my life through my mom, my grandparents, my sister. I want to carry that on and become that safety for somebody else. And I think because I never had my dad present in my life, you know, I kind of want to fill that void in a way by becoming the dad that I would have wanted to have in my life, you know. So I think it's that. I think it's that. But there's never going to be the right time, I think, for me. It's a tough one. I feel like I could do it. You know, Pink, you know, famously brings her kids on tour, and you know, Adele and other people in the industry have been able to have kids and have that career as well. So I think it's achievable, but I just know that I would be head over heels if I had a little kid.
Yeah, I know you would.
Yeah.
I know you would. All right. So now, final question for you.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Yeah, I might be.
Okay. So the final question is,
Yeah.
Callum, you've had some amazing conversations throughout your life. When you think back to, my God, amazing places that you performed for the King with Ed Sheeran, right? I mean, it's just, it's mad. But when you think about the most memorable conversation, who was it with? What did you learn?
Oh my God, that is a great question. What I will say is that I had a conversation with myself. I'll explain what I mean. um, when I had taken my dad for family counselling, and we sat in a room, it had been the first time that I'd heard my dad say that he should have been there when I was younger. There was a therapist there that when my dad had left the room, she said, "Look, I want you to think about this. Your dad in this session has taken responsibility and taken accountability that he should have been there when you was 2 and throughout your life." And she said, "There's going to be a moment when you get home," and she said, "it will happen where 2-year-old Calum will pop up and he will cry his eyes out because he's been heard, he's been listened to, he's been valued, and it's what he needs. And when he comes up to have his moment, you tell him it was never your fault." And I went home, and I'd been home for a couple of days, and I was doom scrolling again, and I saw this video, and it was this beautiful video of this little boy whose granddad had passed away, and for Christmas he got this little teddy bear that was wearing one of his granddad's pocket chiefs or something, and he pressed the hand, and the teddy bear spoke to him, and it said, "Oh, I love you, son," you know that, and the little boy starts crying, and he's like, "Oh, I just miss you, granddad, so much." And I was like, "Whoop, here it comes," and I had this wave of emotion. And when I told you I was sobbing, it was, you know, your stomach is wrenching. It's so hard because you're sobbing so hard. And so I'm sat in my living room crying my eyes out going, "It was never your fault. It was never your fault," talking to 2-year-old Callum. And I was sobbing my heart out for about 45 minutes, a good 45 minutes. But I can't tell you the world of good that did to me. It soothed the 2-year-old in me that has been so desperate for that self-worth, for that moment to just be told that it wasn't his fault. You know, I've carried that weight for such a long time. And so I think that kind of reinforcement to yourself and, you know, talking to yourself, I know it sounds a bit bizarre, but positive reaffirmation is so powerful.
Yes. Well said.
So as much as it's not with anybody, it's with me. That's probably one of the most liberating feelings to date that I've ever had. Is just knowing that I am enough.
Perfectly said. Calum Scott, I tell you what, I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much. It's been an emotional roller coaster for me.
You know what I find so, should I say, warm about you
Yeah.
is that how you described Hull at the very beginning of our conversation is you used the term hidden gem.
Yeah.
You are a hidden gem. You
Thank
were.
you.
You were. But you have chosen yourself and you are no longer hidden. And the world now sees this. And the world now is it's to our benefit,
Yeah.
right? That you are your full self. But more than all of that, you know what you've done is you've kept the promise to your grandmother. Focused on the music, taking care of your sister. And that is what I believe you should be most proud of.
Oh, man. I am. I'm proud of myself, and I'm proud that I've done Hair Proud.
Yeah. Yeah, you should.
What are you doing to me? It's the end of the conversation. I'm crying. Ah,
I will guarantee you right now, this conversation has changed lives.
I hope so.
Guaranteed.
Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. What an absolute
Thank-
pleasure.
Yeah, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. Okay. Now, I've been debating if I should say this or not, but I'm going to say it. One of my favorite conversations that we've had so far on We Need to Talk. It felt as if I was just lost in the story. And just for me, just even from an interviewer's perspective, I think that's the place where you want to be. Calum wasn't scripted. There must be some crazy truth serum that you've dropped in this. Yeah. What is this, vodka? No. He has not done an interview like this ever. Ever. He's 10 years into his professional music career. It wasn't until the Jojo Siwa interview that the stat around LGBTQ plus hiding identity at such high rates, I was not aware of that. What Calum has done is he has struggled with that exact point throughout the majority of his life. He said it wasn't until a few years ago where he's fully embraced himself in full detail. That stays with me. The reason why I think that particular point kind of hangs with me is because I was in that zone for a moment in my childhood. We lived in the city, in New York City. We moved to Long Island. And for me, it was being the first Black family in this neighborhood. And I felt completely ostracized by all of these kids, right? Now, I was a bit more gangster than our guest, so I changed the situation later on in life. But I have felt that. I have felt because of a characteristic, I have been ostracized, right, as a child. And it is just, it's the worst. It's the worst feeling ever. And I think allows me to almost increase my allyship. And I think it's important for everyone to also consider that, in their allyship.